Hello and welcome to today's webcast, How to Investigate Incidents in Azure Sentinel with a live demo brought to you by Insight Cloud and Data Center Transformation. I'm Rachel Mason, Marketing Manager at Insight, and will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows that you have opened. Please note, we will be doing a demo for a majority of this webcast. The media player is the first widget on the left-hand side of your screen and should pre-populate once we begin the demo. You can easily switch between the slide deck and media player at any time. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured, and there will be a Q&A during the last few minutes of the presentation. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical questions. I would now like to turn this presentation over to our presenter, Jason Rader. Jason, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. We're really excited to have you here. I'm Jason Rader, and I am the National Practice Director of the Network and Cloud Security Practice at Insight. I have with me a couple of great guys that are going to help present. And this is a continuation of a previous session. This is the demo portion, and we'll get into that from an agenda perspective in just a second. With us, we have Tony Manelli, who's the managing principal of the security practice for Insight. And we have Gary Bushey, who's a cloud security architect in our practice, and the guy who literally wrote the book on Learn Azure Sentinel. So we're glad to have you guys with us today. From an agenda perspective, and I'm just going to kick it off with just a few remarks after this, we're going to talk about, Azure Sentinel, how an incident is generated, how then creating an analytic rule is achieved, the incident, a little bit about the incident page and what it looks like, how an investigation of an incident would work, and then we'll wrap up with a couple of things and some Q&A at the end. As Rachel said, we can answer questions at any time throughout the entire program, so feel free to use that widget that you've got in the interface. If you haven't tried it out yet, please do, and we will try to answer your questions in real time. If not, we'll definitely answer those at the end of the session. So for the folks who are just joining us and possibly missed our first session, we're glad to have you. Thanks for being here. Azure Sentinel, a lot of excitement around this. And I think a lot of the times when we talk about Azure Sentinel, we refer to it as a SIEM. And it's not necessarily doing it the justice that it deserves as far as it's actually a SIEM and a SOAR. So to kind of talk about those different technologies, we've kind of going to refer to this slide. So SIEM, security information and event management, some people say security incident and event management, either one works, deals with mainly getting the data from multiple sources within an organization, deals with the alerting when specific correlation rules happen, deals with the workbooks associated with how to deal with those particular incidents. There's also a retention element to it as far as the log aggregation across the organization goes, and of course keeping the information available for a forensic analysis. From a SOAR perspective, and SOAR was one of those things that kind of came on us in the last few years, is really about the orchestration and automation and response to those particular incidents and events that have happened. And in doing that, there is obviously a focus on the threat and vulnerability management side of the house, of course, dealing with the incident response itself, and automation, of course, is a big key to this. We really feel, and of course Microsoft does as well, that the automation aspect of this is something that they're really developed thus far with a lot of attention given to it, as well as what they're investing in from a roadmap perspective are really on these particular aspects. And then again, before we kick it over to you, Gary, detecting threats and analyzing the data, the inundated, inundation, is that a word? All of the data that inundates the Security Operations Center is one of those things that Sentinel's really trying to deal with. Of course, they're going to leverage machine learning and threat intelligence. A lot of folks forget that Microsoft has a huge amount of signals that come in to its threat intelligence via all of the different sensors and capabilities that exist out there from a Microsoft perspective, dealing with those, dealing with the correlation and the prioritization that happens when that threat intelligence is ingested, allowing you to ingest your own threat intelligence. If you've got premium feeds or open source feeds that, and maybe you've operationalized some of this within your own organization, integrating that as well into the platform. And of course, if you're have an investment from a machine learning perspective within your organization, you can leverage the machine learning models that are already in the product as well as ingesting your own. But those are some of the things, when we talk about ML with clients, or when we talk about ingesting all of the data and dealing with those correlation rules, are making them ourselves or dealing with that. And just the overall, making sure you're getting the right analytics and signals from the right locations, those are the things that are the hardest parts about having a product like this. And I think Microsoft has endeavored to make it a really easy affair related to that. And of course, the meat of what you're looking for is what is about to happen with Gary. Gary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So the first thing we're going to look at is, how does Azure Sentinel actually generate these alerts and incidents? Well, starting over on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see this is how Azure Sentinel will get its data. These are called the data connectors. If you were with us from the previous webcast, you saw me go over some of those. But you can get the information from Azure resources like network, virtual networks, or VMs, third-party systems. There are some connectors for Citrix, F5. Also, we have the syslog and CEF servers. If there's not a direct connection that's available, you can use those to get the information from your system. And you can also get information from the Microsoft monitoring agent running on your Windows and Linux servers. So those data connectors take the data and push it into the Azure Monitor log analytics. That is where all the data for Azure Sentinel is stored. Then, through a series of Azure Sentinel analytic rules, it will go out, query the log analytics, and determine if there's any events that match the rules. If there are, it creates an alert. And then the alert can also create an incident, or it doesn't have to if you just want the alert out there for the machine learning to recognize it. But if there is an incident, you can investigate it, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the main part of hunting threats and incidents in Azure Sentinel is this graphical view of not only the incident that you're looking at, but any related information in regards to that incident. We will be spending a lot of time on this page when we do our demonstration. You can also use the Azure notebooks if you're doing more of a threat hunting. That will allow you to work with other languages like Python or R and gather information not only from Azure Sentinel, but from outside sources, and then perform a more in-depth hunting on those. So let's start our demonstration, and I'll just do my screen share. All right, so we are on the main overview page of Azure Sentinel. And the parts I wanted to notice are the alerts and the incidents. So in the last 24 hours, we've had 6 alerts and 54 incidents. One thing I didn't mention before is that with Azure Sentinel, you can get alerts and incidents from other security resources inside of Azure, including MCAS, Security Center, and Azure Active Directory Identity Protection. So let's take a look at the analytics area first. These are where the rules are being created that will allow you to query against your logs. I'm just going to close my menu to give a little bit more information. As you see, I have a list of all my active rules. Currently, I have 110 here. So I have the severity, the name, the rule type, and there's currently 4 different rule types. You can see we have Fusion, which is Microsoft's machine learning ability to go and look at disparate alerts that may not necessarily mean much by themselves, but combined in different patterns, combined together, it could warrant an incident to be created. We have the scheduled rules, which are the rules that run on a default timer, and those use the Custo query language to go against the log analytics. We have these Microsoft security rules, which goes against other Azure security products, like I mentioned before, MCAS, Security Center. And then the last one is machine learning behavior analytics. Currently, this is only looking at SSH information if you're logging into Linux to make sure that you're not breaking your established pattern. So if I normally log in Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then I start logging on the weekends, that's going to raise an alert or an incident so that people can investigate to make sure I'm doing my job and not just trying to get in on the weekends to try to grab data. So these alerts will generate your incidents, and we'll take a look at the incidents page next. And again, you can see the number of incidents we have, 54 open, and they're all new because none of them are under investigation. Here's the list of the incidents. The color coding represents its severity. We have the ID, the title, the number of alerts that can go into the incident. There's a new feature now that allows multiple alerts to be put into one incident. So if you're doing the same type of alert over and over, you don't want to have a new incident for each one. You can just group it all into one incident. That way one person can look at all the occurrences of that incident. The product name, as in what generated it, creation time, last time it was updated, the owner, and the status. Clicking on any one of these will give you a little bit more information over here on the right-hand side. So you have your title, the incident ID, severity, status, and owner. If I had the proper rights, I'd be able to change these. I can assign it to myself, change the status to in progress, change severity if I need to. Here's a brief description, an incident link, any of the MITRE, ATT, and CK tactics that this alert would use, the tags, last update time, creation time, classification. If this was closed, there'd be a reason why this was closed, and that would show up. The evidence will have the number of events, alerts, and bookmarks. Bookmarks will allow you to run other queries, save those results, and associate it with this incident. So as you're going through it, you can remember what you have looked at before. And then the entities associated with it. So your account, host, IP, and URL. And if there's any comments, those would be shown as well. Switch to the one that I've looked at for my demonstrations. Now, if I click View Full Details, this will get me a lot more information about the incident. Once this comes up on the left-hand side, it's going to be the exact same details information that we just saw. And then we have these tabs over here on the top. Here's the alerts. So it will show one or more alerts that make up this incident. I can click on the alert ID to get a query to get more information about the alert itself. So I can see a lot of the information that may not necessarily be represented in the incident. Again, the name, any events associated with this, creation time, number of entities, which represents number in here, and then I can do my view playbooks, which represents that SOAR feature. So I can run automated responses against this incident. If I mentioned before, if I had any bookmarks, those would show up here. Here are the entities that I'm going to be looking at. And then any comments. So once I've looked at this, I'm going to click on my investigate. This is going to give me that graphical representation of the information in this incident. As you can see, I have the incident name here, and the line is color-coded to represent the severity. Then I have my three entities. So I have my IP address, my host, and as you can see here, this is my application, Microsoft Exchange. One of the nice things is if I mouse over one of these, I will get more information. So if I was to click on this, it says related alerts 112. It would actually bring up 112 of these alerts in this window, which probably wouldn't be the best thing to look at right now. Let's take a look at, there's still too many. You can see what I'm saying is there's so many alerts showing up at one time. Look at a different incident would be much easier. Oh, that was the one I wanted. One of the joys of using a demonstration environment, it changes a lot. All right, so we will look, here we go, this is a little bit easier to see. Excuse me. So you can see this one has 7 other alerts associated with it, and it's bringing those in. And again, the color coding represents the severity. And as you can see, as I move around, I can change this to make it easier to fit on one page if I want to. And if I look at Gershon here, I can look at the alerts for this person as well. So as I can see, I'm looking at, they were added to admin group 3 different times, granted access to other areas, and being added to the admin group is going to raise a red flag to me. So I'm going to click on this and see what the entities are related to this. Well, I know one of the entities is going to be the name, but I can also see that they were granted access to Office 365 from this IP address. All right, that's not too bad. And I can do this for all of the other entities. And one thing I'm noticing is that the IP address is changing as I go through. So it makes me wonder why they're not logging in from the same place all the time. Let me expand this one out. So this would make me want to look at this a little bit more depth. So as I mouse over the user, you'll see that there's a lot of menu options here. Now, unfortunately, this person doesn't have anything listing, but you can see that there's all of these other queries that I can run against this entity automatically. If there's any information found where it says 0, that would be an actual number. And if I go to my server, you can see I have the most prevalent and least prevalent accounts on the top showing up. So I can click on that, and that's going to give me a little bit more information. This is getting complex. Let me close out some of these.
And Gary, while you're doing that, so when you were talking earlier about it being too many alerts, you were just kind of referring to the demo environment, right? Obviously, the folks that are working in a SOC had the giant monitors and could see all of this stuff kind of laid out pretty well.
Right, and most of the time, you will not have that many alerts associated with one account unless they're doing something really bad. But again, this is a demo environment, so there's no real rules. So once I did this prevalent accounts, you can see that it's bringing up even more information about this. Let me go back to where I was before. And zoom in a little bit. Now, another nice part about this is, okay, I see that I have all of these add to admin accounts, which is raising a red flag. Let me look at the timeline of what's going on here. Now, when I look at this, when I mouse over, you may notice that the information regarding the actual alert I'm looking at is being highlighted, and the other ones kind of fade into the back. And if I was to show you the entities, you will see that those will fade as needed and shown as well. But by looking at this timeline, I notice that my brute force attack is what I'm investigating right now. But the add to the admin group has happened before this attack. So chances are these are not malicious activities. This is supposed to have happened. But anything after this, I would definitely be concerned about. Granting access to my applications, something that I want to look in a lot more detail. Again, if I was to click on one of these, I get some more information about this. One nice feature is there is an entity for URL, and unfortunately, I didn't find one here, but if I was to click on this URL entity, what has happened behind the scenes is Microsoft is taking that URL, putting it into a sandbox, going to that URL and following it all the way down through any redirects it might give you. And then it's checking to see what is happening with that URL at each step. Is it trying to push anything onto your system that would be bad? And at the very end, it will determine whether or not that URL is malicious. So it'll either say good URL or bad URL, and also give you a screenshot of the image of the final page it showed up on. So that'll give you a lot better idea of whether or not the URL a person has gone to is malicious or not. And then I can also see all the entities, and this includes all the entities that have been added and expanded onto here. And again, as I mouse over, you see they get highlighted or dimmed accordingly. So that's the main part for investigating an incident. Now, if you want to go on threat hunting, you can click Hunting tab. And there's all of these predefined queries that can be run. I'm going to go up here and click Run All Queries. So in the background, excuse me, it's taking all of these queries and running them. And as you see, as it runs, there'll be results shown up here. Some of these can't be run because we're missing information, or zeros. So let me find one of these. Consent to application discovery, I believe. Yes. So again, just like with incidents, when I click on this, I get more information about it. So here's who's created it, number of results, the main data source it's looking for in the query, the description, creation time, then I get to see the actual query that's being run. And it can also set up entities if it wants to. And here's the tactics. Now, if I review the results, it'll take me into the logs page with the query, runs it, then I get to see all of the results coming up. And this is also a great place where I can select one or more of these, click Add Bookmark, and this is how I create my bookmark. And as you can see, it's also doing more entities. Chances are this is going to fail because I don't have the rights. Yeah. But once I save a bookmark, I can then associate it with an incident. If I go back and see if there's any bookmarks added, there are none. Another nice new feature is this live stream. I can take a query, in this case it looks like the anonymous sign-on, and add it to the live stream so that when I open my live stream and look at it, what is happening is it will run this query in the background constantly. And if any new results happen, it will show up down here in real time. So if I'm investigating something that I feel is happening right now, I can define my query, put it into my live stream, and then keep watch to see if any new activity occurs. And again, I can select one of these and get information about it. I can also create an analytics rule from this query if I so desire. And then the next thing we want to look at is notebooks. These are Jupyter notebooks. That's Jupyter. It's a pretty standard feature in analytics world, which will allow you to combine not only code, but also text. So you can give people instructions on how to run your environment. And then as you run the queries and you see all the information coming out of that, you can save that results as almost a pseudo PowerPoint presentation that you can then show to whoever needs to see it. Let's see if I can go to my notebooks here.